The metallic tang of fear hung heavy in the air, a familiar scent to Sergeant Miles Wren. His comms unit crackled, spitting static and fractured words. Under attack. Repeat, the station is under attack. Miles didn't wait for orders. He grabbed his pulse rifle, the familiar weight a comfort in his hands, and sprinted through the echoing corridors. Every instinct screamed diplomatic wing where Princess Soraxa, the Barren alien princess, would be. He found her in her quarters, not cowering, but standing tall, a cold fire in her silver eyes. She wore simple black robes, no crown, yet she exuded more regality than any queen he'd seen. "They're here for me," she said, her voice steady. "I know," Miles replied, his own voice firm, "but they're going to have to get through me first. Escape into the shadows, with the help of a wounded Corellan guard." They slipped into a maintenance shaft, a narrow, dust-filled tunnel of old wiring and forgotten pipes. Soraxa moved with surprising grace, a testament to her royal training. She wasn't just a princess. She was a survivor. She remembered ancient emergency routes and access codes even the guards had forgotten. They descended into the station's lower levels, a forgotten labyrinth where the power had long since died. Emergency lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that made the cracked walls seem to writhe. It was a ghost town, abandoned and crumbling, yet for the first time in weeks Miles felt a flicker of hope. They were together. Hours bled into an eternity. They moved slowly, carefully, avoiding rebel patrols whose shouts echoed through the decaying halls. They hid in a storage bay, a graveyard of broken tech and forgotten crates. Miles patched a gash on his arm, the dull ache a constant reminder of their precarious situation. Soraxa sat beside a rusted console, her breathing soft and even. "Why are they so afraid of you?" Miles asked, breaking the oppressive silence. Soraxa looked at the dark ceiling, her eyes distant. "Because I'm a symbol of everything they hate. A princess who can't continue the bloodline. A royal who speaks with a human. A woman who chose peace." "You're more than a symbol," Miles countered, his voice low. She turned to him, her silver eyes searching his. "And what am I to you?" Miles hesitated, then spoke simply, directly, as was his way. "You're someone I want to protect." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was warm, filled with an unspoken understanding. Soraxa reached out, her fingers gently touching his hand. "No one ever said that to me," she whispered. A sanctuary of hope. They rested for a few hours, the shared warmth of their presence a shield against the cold, encroaching darkness. Then Soraxa's eyes widened. "There's an ancient Killen shrine," she said, her voice hushed, "built into the old station structure. It was made before the war, before we turned everything into steel and weapons. If we can reach it, we might find power, shelter, maybe even a working distress signal." Miles nodded, his heart stirring with renewed purpose. "Then we go there." The path was treacherous. They crossed a collapsed bridge, crawled through twisted metal, and even had to fight off 2 rebel scouts. Miles moved with the brutal efficiency of a seasoned soldier, quick and deadly. To his surprise, Soraxa picked up a fallen rifle and with perfect aim shot one rebel in the chest. "You've done this before," Miles said, his eyebrows raised. "Only in training," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "But I remembered." At last they reached the shrine. It was hidden behind a sealed door, covered in ancient symbols. Soraxa placed her palm on a glowing panel, and with a low hum, the door swung open. Inside was silence, bathed in a soft golden light. This wasn't just a shrine, it was a royal sanctuary. Carvings of past rulers adorned the walls, which were lined with glowing crystals. A single round chamber stood in the center. "This is beautiful," Miles murmured, taking in the serene beauty of the place. "It was built to remind us of peace," Syraxa said, her voice almost a whisper, "before war made us forget." A promise under starlight inside the sanctuary, they found something even more valuable than shelter, an ancient command terminal, still connected to old royal networks. Syraxa activated it, sending a secret distress code to the outer sectors. Help would come, but it would take time. For now they had to wait. They lit small lamps, casting flickering shadows that danced on the crystal walls. They shared a meal of ration bars and purified water, sitting across from each other in a room built by kings. Here, in this improbable sanctuary, they spoke freely, openly. Syraxa asked about Earth cities, oceans, pets, laughter. Miles told her about his mother's cooking, his dog back home, the soothing sound of rain on a tin roof. "I wish I could see your world," she said, her voice wistful. "You can," Miles replied, a warmth spreading through him. "Someday." Then, without warning, he stood up. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, simple silver ring with a glowing blue band. Military issue identification ring. But he held it out to her as if it were the most precious jewel in the galaxy. "Marry me," he said, his voice husky. Syraxa froze. "What? I know it's insane. I know we're in the middle of a war zone. But I've fought for so many things that meant nothing. You mean something. You've always meant something. But I can't give you children," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't ask for heirs," Miles said, taking a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "I asked for you." Tears welled in her eyes, not from weakness, but from an overwhelming rush of emotion. No one had ever chosen her before, not as a symbol, not as a tool, but as a person. "You're serious?" she whispered. Miles nodded. "I've never been more serious." Syraxa took the ring slowly, her fingers trembling. She held it for a moment, then slipped it onto her finger. "I accept," she said, her voice thick with emotion. They didn't kiss right away. They didn't need to. Their bond was deeper than touch, forged in fire, grown in silence, and sealed in trust. In that ancient chamber, surrounded by the memories of an empire, a human soldier and an alien princess found something rare, something profound, a reason to believe. A storm of change far above them, the Terran Federation had received the distress call. Reinforcements were on their way. And below, in the shadows of the station, the rebels had learned something dangerous. The Barren princess was not hiding anymore. She was rising. The stars outside the station shone bright, but inside, things were changing fast. The rebel attack had failed, thanks to the hidden shrine and Syraxa's ancient codes. A fleet of Terran and allied Caroline ships landed, driving the rebels out and securing the station. Miles and Syraxa walked through the halls together, no longer hiding. Word spread like wildfire, not just that she had survived, but that she had fought, that she had led. And most shocking of all, she had married a human soldier. News exploded across the galactic network. Princess Syraxa, Barren heir of the Kulin Empire, marries Terran sergeant, scandal or revolution? Mixed blood. Alliance shakes royal court. From exile she had become a symbol of change, the princess who chose love over law. Some called her mad, others called her brave. The Corellan High Court, however, was furious. They summoned Syraxa back to the home world, Viral Prime, a massive, crystal fortress glowing blue beneath twin suns. It was beautiful, cold, and full of whispers. The moment Syraxa and Miles stepped off their ship, the stares began. Corellan nobles in golden robes glared at Miles like he was dirt. Even some palace guards looked at Syraxa with pity, as if she had fallen too far to be saved. But Syraxa walked with her head high. Miles stayed at her side, his armor clean, his posture proud. He didn't care about their titles. He only cared about her, the throne hall's fury inside the throne hall. Empress Seraph, Syraxa's mother, sat on a high seat made of light steel and memory glass. Her face was calm, her voice sharp. You were given peace. You were given a quiet exile. Why did you bring shame upon this house? Syraxa stepped forward. Because I will not live as a ghost anymore. A ghost who marries a Terran, one elder hissed. The bloodline must stay pure, another barked. What can a barren woman offer with a human mate? Miles stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the ancient rulers in their glowing robes. He spoke in a clear, strong voice. She gives you a new one that isn't based on what someone can produce, but on what they choose to protect. A long silence followed, heavy with unspoken tension. Later that evening, Syraxa and Miles were placed under house watch. Not prison, but not freedom either. They stayed in a guest chamber, guarded and watched. But outside the palace walls, something unexpected began to happen. Across the Kellen networks, young people began to speak up. Many admired Syraxa. They created forums, shared art, sent messages. Her face, once a forgotten name in history, now appeared on banners. Some wore silver rings in her honor. Others quoted her speeches. She had become a symbol of rebellion, not through violence, but by refusing to be ashamed. A blade in the dark butt. Symbols are dangerous. 3 nights after their hearing, Syraxa's quarters were attacked. A group of masked assassins, secretly working for a royal faction, broke in using stolen access codes. Miles heard the soft beep of a hacked lock first. He didn't hesitate. He tackled Syraxa to the ground as a blade sliced through the air above them. The fight was brutal, 1 against 3. Miles was wounded, a deep cut across his back, but he fought like a beast, using every move he'd learned in war. In the end, he killed 2 of them. The third fled, leaving behind a trail of black blood. Palace guards arrived too late. Syraxa stood over her husband, his body bleeding, her face covered. In tears, "No," she whispered, her voice a raw plea. "Not again. I won't lose him." The next day, everything changed. Syraxa went to the central court again, this time alone. With dried blood still on her sleeves, she spoke not with sadness, but with fire. "You call yourselves rulers," she said, her voice echoing through the crystal hall. "But you're afraid of change, afraid of anyone who challenges your old rules. You banish your own daughter, then try to kill her when she dares to return. I have no children, but I have courage, and I have a partner, not chosen by tradition, but by truth. And if that makes me unworthy of this empire, then your empire is unworthy of survival. Silence. But outside, across the stars, her message went everywhere. In a quiet healing center in the palace, Miles lay in a medical pod, his wounds slowly mending. When Saraxa entered, he smiled weakly. "You always make big speeches when I'm not there," he joked. "You were bleeding, remember?" She reached out and held his hand. "Did they listen?" "No," she said softly, "but others did. The new Dawn 3 days. Later, something no one expected happened. An emergency vote was called by the Council of Sectors, a group of leaders from both Kiralan and allied worlds. They proposed a new law, one that would allow royal adoption, cross-species marriage recognition, and the end of bloodline-based rule. It was a long shot. Many believed it would fail. But when the votes came in, the law passed by only 2 votes. History had changed. Saraxa was offered a seat on the Reform Council, a new body formed to oversee the transition of the Kyolan Empire into a constitutional monarchy. The emperor stepped down quietly, citing old age and a new age. Miles was given full Terran honors and a permanent diplomatic post that would keep him close to Saraxa. Some nobles still hated them, some still whispered. But the people, the common people, the young, the forgotten, loved them. They had won something more than power. They had won respect. One night, as the twin moons rose over the palace gardens, Saraxa sat beside Miles. He was better now, the scar on his back healing. Their hands were joined. "I never thought this would happen," she said, her voice soft. "Not in this life. I didn't either," Miles replied. "I'm glad we proved them wrong." She looked at him. "Do you regret it? Marrying me?" He leaned closer, smiling. "Saraxa, I married the strongest person in this empire. I'd do it again in every galaxy." They kissed under starlight, not as princess and soldier, not as human and alien, but as 2 souls who chose each other. The new dawn on Varel Prime was full of hope, but also shadows. Whispers and betrayal. Saraxa Valkarellan sat by a tall window in the Reform Council chamber, looking out at the shimmering city below. The crystal towers gleamed in the sunlight. But her mind was heavy. The empire was changing, but not everyone welcomed that change. The royal palace still held old secrets and enemies. Several powerful nobles who opposed reforms were gathering quietly in the dark corners of the city. They whispered about her marriage to a human soldier, about her betrayal of the royal bloodline. Some even plotted to remove her from the council, by force if necessary. Among them was Lord Varkas, a cold man with sharp eyes and sharper ambitions. He had lost his chance at the throne because of Saraxa's rise, and he hated her for it. Varkas met with his closest allies in a secret chamber beneath the palace. "We cannot allow this mockery of our traditions to continue," he said, his voice low but hard. "The people may like her now, but fear will return when the rebels come back, and they will come back." Meanwhile, Saraxa and Miles worked tirelessly to build trust across the sectors. Mixed-species marriages were a new frontier, and not an easy one. Many Corellan citizens still saw humans as enemies. Old prejudices ran deep. Saraxa and Miles held public speeches, attended cultural events, and even visited distant colonies together to show unity. Their relationship became a symbol, a beacon for peace and acceptance. But it also made them targets. One afternoon, while walking through the palace gardens, Saraxa received a mysterious message. It was an encrypted hologram from an unknown source. The face that flickered onto the screen was old and scarred, a former Corellan spy named Talinus. "I have information," Talinus said, his voice raspy, "about the rebels, about someone close." "To you," Saraxa frowned. "What do you mean?" "The rebels have infiltrated the Reform Council. Someone you trust is a traitor." The words hit her like a shock wave. She trusted many on the council, but if even one was a spy, the fragile peace could crumble. She shared the message with Miles. "We need to find this traitor," he said, "before they strike." The traitor within that night. They began discreet investigations. They reviewed council records, monitored communications, and interviewed members, under the pretense of diplomacy. It was a slow, dangerous game. Days later, during a council meeting, Saraxa noticed something odd. One of the advisors, Lady Corella, seemed nervous. She avoided eye contact and interrupted others with sharp replies. Saraxa watched her closely. After the meeting, Saraxa approached Lady Corella privately. "Is everything all right?" she asked. Lady Corella forced a smile. "Of course, Princess. Why do you ask?" Saraxa's eyes narrowed. "I've received warnings about spies. I hope you understand the importance of honesty." Lady Corella's smile faded, replaced by a cold glare. "Be careful with your accusations," she whispered. "Not everyone wants peace." Later, Saraxa and Miles discussed their suspicions. "We can't confront her without proof," Miles warned. "It could be a trap," Saraxa nodded. "Then we watch, wait for her to make a move." The tension grew. One evening, Saraxa and Miles were walking back from a council dinner when an explosion rocked the palace gardens. Flames lit up the night sky. Panic erupted. They rushed toward the fire and found a group of masked attackers setting fire to a pavilion where young diplomats gathered. Miles drew his weapon and fought off the attackers, protecting the diplomats. Saraxa ordered the guards to evacuate the area. The attackers fled into the shadows. The attack was a clear message. The rebels were still strong. Victory, bitter and sweet in the aftermath, Saraxa convened an emergency council session. "We cannot allow fear to divide us," she said firmly. "We must root out those who seek to destroy our future." Lady Corella was questioned again, but denied any involvement. However, her defiance only raised more suspicions. Miles suggested they use a hidden tracker device on council members' personal items to catch the traitor. Saraxa agreed, though it felt like a betrayal. Days passed. Then, during a routine meeting, an alarm sounded. The trackers had detected unauthorized communications between Lady Corella and known rebel cells. She was confronted and confessed. Lady Corella revealed that Lord Varkas had promised her power in exchange for loyalty. With the traitor exposed, the council took action. Varkas was arrested and stripped of his titles. The victory was bittersweet. Saraxa knew more enemies waited in the shadows, but she had something they did not: the support of the people and the love of a human soldier who stood by her no matter what. That night, in the quiet of their chambers, Miles took Saraxa's hand. "We're not done yet," he said softly. "No," Saraxa replied, her eyes fierce. "But we will win." Outside, the twin moons rose again, casting silver light over Varel Prime. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, hope burned bright. A legacy forged in love, The trial of Lord Varkas was swift. The evidence against him was clear, and the council voted unanimously to banish him from Varel Prime forever. His followers scattered like shadows at dawn, but the threat was not completely gone. The Kirin Empire was old enough to have secrets buried deep beneath the shining towers and ancient traditions. It would take time to change hearts hardened by centuries of fear and pride. Syraxa Valkyrellin stood on the balcony of the palace, looking out at the city. The sky was painted with the colors of the two setting suns, orange, purple, and gold. Beside her stood Miles Wren, his hand resting gently on hers. "I never imagined this would be possible," Syraxa said softly. "That we would bring change, not just to the Empire, but to the people." Miles smiled. "You were always meant for this. You just needed someone to see it." She looked at him, her eyes bright. "I'm glad it was you." Peace was not just about ending war, it was about building trust. Syraxa and Miles dedicated their days to visiting colonies, holding talks with local leaders, and listening to the hopes and fears of ordinary citizens. They created programs to support mixed families, encourage education, and heal old wounds. One morning, a message arrived from Earth. It was from Miles's family. They had heard of the princes and the soldier, their story spreading like wildfire. His mother's voice was trembling as she spoke through the holoscreen. "We're proud of you, Miles. You brought honor not just to our family, but to all of humanity." Miles's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Mom." Syraxa watched him, feeling a warmth she had never known. The last challenge, but change always meets resistance. A new threat emerged, not from outside enemies, but from those who feared progress. A group of rebels led by a young woman named Yara called for a return to old ways. She was a fierce warrior, respected by many, and her followers believed that the Empire's strength lay in purity, in tradition. Yara challenged Syraxa publicly. "Your marriage is a lie," she said in a broadcast. "You betray our people. We must fight for the true Kirillan future." Syraxa knew that words alone would not stop Yara. She needed to show strength. She organized a summit, bringing leaders from all factions together to discuss peace and the future. Miles stood by her side as she spoke. "Change is not easy. It is a journey. We walk it together, as one people, one empire." The summit was tense, but it ended with a promise to work toward unity. Days later, Yara's rebels attacked a small border colony. Syraxa and Miles led a defense force to protect the people. The battle was fierce but brief. Syraxa fought alongside her soldiers, her pulse rifle steady in her hands. Miles covered her flank, shouting orders and saving lives. Together, they inspired their troops to victory. After the battle, Syraxa spoke to the soldiers. "Today we proved that courage is stronger than fear, that love and unity can overcome hate." Her words echoed across the galaxy. Life slowly began to change. Mixed families flourished. Children from different worlds played together in parks. Old wounds healed through honest conversation. Syraxa and Miles often walked through the city, watching the future unfold. One evening, under the stars, Miles knelt before Syraxa once more. This time he held a small device, a symbol of new beginnings. "It's not just a ring," he said. "It's a promise to build a family, not by blood, but by love." Syraxa smiled, tears shining in her eyes. I accept, she whispered. Together they faced the future, not as a barren princess and a human soldier, but as partners who had changed an empire. Their story became legend, a reminder that love and courage can rewrite the stars.